This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is the 2022 iPhone 14 Pro. More often I do the Max. This time I decided to do the Pro. In fact, for myself, I'm going to downsize a little bit. I'll talk about the trade-offs of that sort of thing. So 2022's iPhone, a lot like 2021's and maybe even 2020's. I know some of you are missing that endorphin rush where every year there was a new exciting iPhone. But that's not to say there aren't some things here that are really nice new additions to the iPhone line that I think are going to be pretty sticky. So beyond that, the design, as you can guess, is just about the same on this. The sizes offered are the same, 6.1 inch and 6.7 inch. The cameras do stick out, the camera lenses, a bit more because there's a larger sensor inside and physics says that you need that. So yeah, definitely you're going to want a case with this one. But your iPhone doesn't exist in a vacuum and you've got to level up your tech. So that brings up our sponsor for this video, ESR. And we know about their cases. I've covered those before. My favorite has to be, though, their standing case, which uses a metal protective ring around the camera cluster as the stand. So no ugly metal bar, and it's adjustable. But beyond that, they have their new Halo Lock 3-in-1 wireless charger. So charges your iPhone, portrait, and landscape modes, and your AirPods or AirPods Pro with the wireless charging case, and your Apple Watch, and it uses the Apple Puck, so you don't have to worry about third-party compatibility with charging. But also, it is the world's fastest charger right now, MagSafe charger for the iPhone. It has Cryo Boost, which means there's a fan built into the back of the MagSafe charging area. But if you're sleeping, there is a button to disable that. It'll charge a little bit slower, but it's really not that loud. Honestly, it doesn't bother me. Very cool. And also now they've got their Halo Lock kickstand in two sizes, the mini and the big one, so 5,000 or 10,000 milliamps. So it's a kickstand and a battery pack charger. Be sure to use the link in the description to save 20%. Now, back to our review. All right, the new color this year is purple. You know, every year Apple comes out with some new color, that's it. So we've got the purple. You can see what it looks like. I like it. There's also a new ink leather case. You can see what that one looks like. And it's kind of sometimes purple, sometimes blue, very dark. So it doesn't look like the pictures on their website for those of you who are hoping for a truly matching leather purple case. But if you go with the silicone case, there's elderberry. Or if you go with the SR cases, then you got clear cases and you can show off the beauty of the phone, which is kind of cool. So when I was saying that there's not a lot new here, but there kind of really is. Well, you know, gone are the days where every year was something new and exciting. Smartphones have kind of reached an evolutionary peak. Now, maybe if Steve Jobs was alive and we still had Johnny Ive before Johnny Ive became a parody of himself, they would think of something that we really never knew we needed to know, but it's a mature industry. It's not something like, wow, a touchscreen phone. We need that. We never had anything like it. There's that. That said, I actually think that the new additions are a little more important than some people realize. First, there's the horribly named Dynamic Island, which sounds like it needs its own reality TV show. So first I thought I might like it even less than the notch, and I'm no notch lover, because the row of pixels, display pixels that you see above it, kind of make it more obvious in a way. When you see, say you're playing a video or something, and a little bit of the video is there between the bezel and the Dynamic Island. Turns out to me, it ended up not being any more disruptive than having a notch. Obviously, Dynamic Island is an answer to a problem that Apple can't solve with current technology, okay? So what's that mean? We have that Face ID 3D scanning sensor in the front. It's pretty big, and we have a pretty decent FaceTime camera now with autofocus. So you know how Apple is. They wait for a technology to mature. Now that's not an excuse for them not being on the cutting edge, yada, yada. It's actually true in this case. We know what under-display cameras look like. Like, I love the Galaxy Z Fold 4. That under-display camera, not really very good. Apple's not going to go with meh. They're going to wait till it's really good. So there goes under-display camera. And the Face ID sensor, which is one of my favorite things, allows for a very secure experience, but it has to be a big sensor with a pretty big hole in the front for it to be that effective. And it brings things like the fact that if you're upgrading, like say I did from my 13 Pro Max to this 14 Pro, and you just transfer your stuff over from your old iPhone, you know, I do the same thing with Android phones all the time, and I use those equally as often as the iPhone. But there, even if you do content transfer, pretty much you have to re-log into every app, redo your two-factor authentication logins, all that stuff. Not so much the case. This is what Face ID brings us because it's more secure. And also it's kind of neat. You just pick up your phone, it sees you and it unlocks. You don't have to use your fingerprint or anything else. So these are the quality of life things that Apple can't accomplish yet without having the unsightly thing on the screen that they did something clever with. They made the dynamic notch Obviously, they could add 2 little holes instead, right? But instead, they kept that kind of strip of black because they made it interactive and they improved multitasking. So one of my least favorite things is when I'm using an iPhone and I have to, or any phone, have to switch between 2 apps, right? Like say, homeowner problem. I'm using the timer because I'm backwashing the pool pump or something like that. And I'm looking at a YouTube instruction on how to do something like that. And I have to, how am I going to see both of these things at once, right? So now the timer is right up there in the dynamic island. Brilliant, simple, no more swiping back and forth, missing what somebody said on YouTube or missing the deadline on the timer. If you're doing media playback, then press and hold on it and you can expand it even bigger. Otherwise, you got a little bit of display there and you got bigger controls and more information. It's really nice. And as more third parties support this, it's going to be great for things like you've called an Uber and you're meanwhile texting somebody. And instead of swiping back and forth and going to see where your Uber is or something like that, you've got status going on up top. Nice. So I think that's going to be one of those sticky things that once you have it, it's going to be hard to give up. And when technology actually allows them to get rid of that dynamic island in terms of the display cameras and all that stuff, I think we'll actually miss it in a way. So what will they replace it with? So anyway, it's much better. It's much better than the touch strip on MacBook Pros and that sort of thing, which really was answering a problem nobody had. We all liked our FN keys just fine and our multimedia keys, right? So it's pretty cool. Makes life better. This is where Apple is at now doing that. The other thing is always on display. Now you can laugh. I mean, I sure did at first because God, Android phones have had that forever and I really like it. But they kind of took it up another notch. Even Carl Pei, who's Mr. Android, right? He was saying, wow, that is done better than anything I've seen. So it's not just monochrome, it's actually got colors. It's gonna mess with your head a little bit though, because at first it looks like it's the lock screen. And you're gonna think, why didn't my phone go completely asleep? Before you get used to the fact that it's quite colorful and fairly informative. It is informative. There's more stuff there. So maybe less actually turning on your phone for those of us who are trying to not spend so much time on our phone. And it's pretty to look at. And before you think, oh my God, it's going to tank battery life and all that kind of thing. Well, they took the same technology they use for always on display for Apple Watch here. So it is a different, physically, a different kind of screen than is used on the 13. So it can't be back ported to it. It can refresh at only 1 hertz rate. So it doesn't have to constantly spend a lot of power. It's a low LTPO display on it also, very power efficient. So it should have less than 1% effect on your battery runtime. So it's absolutely worth it. And then if you're wondering about, what about if it's wasting CPU cycles, by the way, it has its own processor, a coprocessor, just to manage the screen, very low power. If you put it in your pocket or if you put it in a purse, it knows that it's in a pocket or purse, like phones have known, so it turns off. If you have it on your table, say you're trying to sleep at night, your bedside table, just put it face down, it will also turn off. Now, if you're wirelessly charging, if you have the one of those little MagSafe pucks, you can still put it face down. But obviously, if you have one of those big large desk accessory style ones, then that's not an option. But you can turn off always on display too, if you don't like it, if you have that problem. There it is. Next, there's paranoid about my health, Apple. So I don't know, but Apple's whole keynote when it came to the Apple Watch and the iPhone were about personal safety in different sorts of ways. So first off, and it's pretty cool actually, now you have actual satellite service after a fashion. Now this is not going to be enabled till this fall, but say you're out of cellular coverage, like hiking in the far reaches of Yosemite. It's actually happened to me and there is no cell coverage and something happens. You should be able to communicate for emergency services to say, help, I've fallen and I can't get up, basically, or a bear just chased me down a mountain and I think I'm going to die soon. That's the idea. You know, it's going to tell you to aim it at a satellite and it's going to be mostly text-based, but it's free, so I'm not going to say no, even if the whole keynote did make you feel a little paranoid about your health and safety kind of thing. The other thing, which every reviewer makes a joke about, and I will too, is crash detection. That's great. I won't test it. I can't test it. I refuse to test it. Let's assume that Apple destroyed enough cars testing it, it seems like they did actually, to say that that works. So you're in a really bad car crash. This doesn't mean you accidentally walked into a wall because you're a klutz. It means like bam, you know, a sufficient amount of force. Then your phone's going to say, I think you're in a crash. I'm going to call 911 unless you tell me to stop. So again, that's great. And I'll talk about the Apple Watch and the Apple Watch Ultra in separate reviews, which have even more features like, you know, the siren. So in case somebody is trying to accost you or whatever, you can set that siren off. Actually, also good for Yosemite if you're being chased by that bear. Let me tell you, an 86 decibel siren probably will scare the heck out of that bear. So let's talk about a feature not everybody's too happy about. The phone in the United States has eSIM. It does not have a physical SIM card slot anymore. Average everyday non-international traveling users probably will be like, whatever. And I did the transfer from a physical SIM to an eSIM from my iPhone 13 Pro Max to this iPhone 14 Pro, and I didn't have any problems with it. It worked easily enough. Both of them were running iOS 16 at the time. But anyway, eSIM probably is the future, and it's not just about some kind of cost saving or space saving, though it does save a little bit of space. But the idea is your phone is a bit more secure because this way you can deactivate the phone more easily and more completely and keep tracking the phone when somebody steals it, whereas before they took out your SIM card, harder to track it. I know there's Find My and all that kind of thing. I suppose that's one rationalization, but it's pretty convenient because you can have two active SIMs at the same time. So folks in the United States are not so familiar with that. Overseas, in Europe, that's more popular. So you have a work and a personal line, and you can have them both active on one single phone, which a lot of folks find is more convenient. And you can store up to 8 eSIMs on the phone. So you're switching back and forth. Say that you travel to Mexico once a month. You can just activate that eSIM again. So that's kind of nice. There are also websites where you can find out which eSIMs are the cheapest and the best deal and get a hold of them online. So it's not like you can't travel internationally with eSIM, but it is a bit more inconvenient, obviously, than just swapping SIM cards in and out. And some of you may travel to some countries where it's still not widely available, eSIM. Given the market share that Apple has in the cloud, I have a feeling a lot of carriers in countries that don't support it real well will start supporting it. But I think a lot have. All the major and many of the minor US carriers do. Certainly for things like Apple Watches, which are eSIM based only, and Samsung Galaxy Watches, they've already been doing that sort of thing. It is what it is. While we're speaking about international things, in the United States, despite the fact that we have inflation and endless supply chain things, the price of the iPhone has not changed. But overseas, like in Europe, it has gone up the equivalent of, I think, about $146, to which I can only say, I'm sorry. I think it has to do with the strength of the dollar more than anything else. I'm no macro or microeconomist, but that seems to be what it is, sorry. Inside we have the new Apple A16 processor. As always, it gets better, it gets faster. It's not monumentally faster, but it gets faster. And now we have 6 gigs of even faster RAM inside, so it's good to see Apple upping the RAM, as obviously we do all multitask, hence the appeal of Dynamic Island. Did anybody feel like their iPhone was slow? Probably not, unless you had a really old one. But hey, that's nice. Can do anything. Lastly, there's the cameras. So, you know, if you watch my channel, I'm a photographer. Like, I use actual standalone DSLR, well, mirrorless cameras, really. Fuji, Sony A7, R4, that sort of thing. So no phone is ever going to replace those cameras for me, but it's good to see them getting better because obviously this is what you have with you at all times, your phone. So the main camera is the big change here. So it goes from 12 megapixels, which has been forever, to 48 megapixels. And you can shoot RAW if you want in your choice of 12 or 48 megapixels. Mind you, the 48 megapixel files are going to be about 75 megabyte each, so storage can fill up if you're doing that. So, are the pictures better? They are. If you're shooting 12 megapixel equivalent JPEGs, it's using pixel binning, which we've seen in many phones and camera phones before. So it takes 48, combines them down to 12, so you get the best, sharpest pixels available is the idea there. It's a little bit better in JPEG mode, but not a lot. And Apple, like just about everybody else, is over-sharpening their photos, which I really hate in JPEGs. I wish they would stop that. It's like my eyes hurt when I look at it. You take a picture of a grassy lawn and you see every blade over-sharpened. So that's why the RAW mode is nice, and the 48 megapixel RAW mode, if you want to get something more photographic. Shoot in RAW, you can control the sharpening, you can reduce it, you can increase it after the fact. And when you've got 48 megapixels to work with, you're starting to get an uncanny amount of detail. And the sample photos that I took, some were shot with RAW and edited, and some were shot straight out of camera. The ones straight out of camera are very pleasing. They're colorful, they're sharp, the contrast is great, so it's not like it does a bad job. But for those who are looking for that next step up in more serious photography, the 48 megapixel is the real deal. A lot of detail. Nice. And also, because it's so big, you can now shoot a 2x zoom. We have a 3x physical telephoto lens as we did before, along with the ultra wide. But the 2x basically does something akin to pixel binning, let's just call it that, and still gives you a good 2x shot, which I think is a sweet spot because the main camera is pretty darn wide. If you want something a little bit less distorting in its viewpoint, but you don't want to go all the way to telephoto, you've got that there. I like that. I like that a lot. So about battery life, you know, unless you have this phone for at least a week, I haven't had it a whole week yet, it's really hard to say because we've got iCloud stuff going on. We've got apps downloading. We're taking a lot more pictures and video. And by the way, video is still the best on this. I mean, you could say the Pixel 6 Pro takes the best photos still, but this definitely takes the best video. But anyway, so far, having gone from a 13 Pro Max down to a 14 Pro, you're going to take a battery life hit because smaller battery on the smaller phone. I was a little worried about that. So far, it hasn't been too painful, but you know, for all of you people who are trying to decide about that, the Pro Max is still going to be the one. In terms of battery runtimes versus the last generation, for me, so far, it's been about the same, given iOS 16 being on both phones. So there's that. I haven't seen anything worse. AOD doesn't really make a difference on it. So there you go. The new purple kid on the block for 2022, of course, available in less out there colors for those of you who prefer it. And it's a good phone and it's a good experience. For those of you who are upgrading from iPhone 10 and 11, 8 or 6, whatever it is, you're going to be delighted at many improvements that have happened over the generations. Clearly, if you're going from one generation old or even two, there's some nice things here. There's some interactive game changers, like I said, like Dynamic Island and the always on display that are nice, but it's not going to be something like I got to go out and spend the huge bucks on, which has been the story of smartphones for several years now, hasn't it? I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, including the Apple Watch 8 and the Apple Watch Ultra. And thumbs up if you like this vid.